All right, welcome to the first step of executing a data-driven career. That starter kit portion, the basic foundation, and moving on from the fundamentals to the beginning of the execution. I go much more in depth on the pro program, which you can access as well. But today, what I really want to get into is understanding your own expectations. Remember, you sit within this entire ecosystem of expectations, and you need to understand what your expectations are. This is really important. Often it's a difficult question that I find for people to answer in mentorship sessions that I have. But the reason why this is important, number one, going beyond like understanding what you want and where you want to go in the near and the long term, it's if you don't do this, life or other people, whether they mean it or not, are ultimately going to set these expectations for you. And you're going to end up with things that maybe you do really like, or maybe that you don't, but you're not going to have a sense of ownership of actually making that happen. So the most difficult thing for people often to determine is that like long-term expectation. So in 5 years, what are you expecting to have? What do you want? And one approach that I like to use is what you see on the screen. It is combining what intrinsically drives you from a motivation standpoint with a 5-year headline. And I'll cover the intrinsic motivation piece first. So what is intrinsic motivation? Intrinsic motivation from a job standpoint is no matter what role you have, no matter what job you have, if there's a certain aspect of work that presents itself, and when you do it, it feels like timeless and you're in this flow state and you naturally gravitate towards that work, that is essentially something you're intrinsically motivated to do. That opportunity intrinsically motivates you. And you have a higher likelihood that you'll complete tasks around that. And you'll have a higher likelihood that you won't experience negative stress. So there's like growth stress, which you're excited and you're challenged, but then there's like redundant stress of this is hard to do. It's not that I can't do it. I'm not excited to do it. So what is an example of intrinsic motivation? For me, I've been working professionally for 24 years. Whether I've been a designer or a chief operating officer or head of a team or an independent contributor, when there was an opportunity to solve some type of ambiguous challenge, that would just put on a light, like a light bulb on top of my head. I would love that kind of opportunity and I would gravitate towards it. And I would, no matter in any of those roles I've played in my 24-year career, those types of problems, I would be intrinsically motivated to solve them. So you want to look for that kind of thing, maybe not necessarily an ambiguous problem, but things that when you go to them, a light bulb goes off and you're like, I'm excited to do this. So how do you define that? And this is in the worksheet. Look over a 2-week period to understand what tasks you liked and which tasks maybe you didn't like or even hated, and document at least 5, if not 10 for each. And if you have to think back further, do that to get a sense of what you might really like to do or that motivates you in any given role that you have. And I'll highlight that in the how-to video for this particular part of the program. That'll be in a separate video. So that takes care of the intrinsic motivation piece in terms of understanding those long-term expectations. The other exercise is, which is informed by intrinsic motivation, is the 5-year headline. So the 5-year headline is an exercise where I'm asking you to look 5 years into the future and imagine a popular articles written about you in some publication that you really like, potentially by an author that you really enjoy, and you're very proud and you feel accomplished and you feel like you did it, and you're going around to your family and your bosses and your friends, and it's like you're telling them about this, what would the headline be in that article that made you feel that way? And why? And in the worksheet, I go a little bit deeper to help you to figure that out. And then what I want you to do is to then think about, okay, in year 4, what was the milestone before that? In year 3, what was the milestone before the year 4 milestone, and so on, year 2, year 1, and 6 months, so that you start with the end in mind, and then you kind of understand generally what some milestones might be in order to make that happen. And then as part of achieving those milestones, thinking about the different skills that you might have to acquire to get to those milestones. And how might you understand what those milestones and skills are? Think about from your own experience. Think about what others that you trust might say about milestones and skills required. Look at job descriptions if some of these milestones are certain job levels or types of jobs. And then what I really encourage you to do is actually to ask other people about certain milestones, whether it's the choice of milestone or the skills within each of the milestones. Ask, get more data. You're getting this data from yourself. You're kind of predicting the data of what you think others might say that you trust, but then go out and ask them. Take the time to do this because you want that endpoint in mind. If you don't have the endpoint, it's going to make it very difficult to set your direction. So you need this data point as part of your career acceleration. And then what this also allows you to do is once you understand what you expect and what people that have great influence over your career expect, and you can corroborate it and you understand it clearly, you're able to align these things to really drive acceleration in your career. And I'll talk more about that in a video in the future. So right now, go to the worksheet, look at tab 1.1 for this exercise, go to the next video and I'll walk you through the different columns.